No one can tell the story of the National Alliance for Insurance Education and Research like its co-founder, Dr. William T. Hold. Let's look back on the last 50 years and see how they have shaped our co-founder and executive chairman and what he's learned.
I've just finished my dissertation. Here I'm being interviewed about the compensation of automobile accident victims. So I was very fortunate because that was the topic of the day. There's Senate investigations, there's all kinds of problems with auto insurance. And they wrote the article. I couldn't wait for it to come out. And then I saw it come out, big headline, Insurance Professor Blasts Industry. Now, this is not good for my career at all. So I called him and was really aggravated that we don't control the headlines. But that got people's attention, and that led me to the company group I worked for later on in later years. I was a vice president of research and development. That led me to working for the American and Texas trial lawyers. That gave me, I had a reputation with that. And that's why eventually people heard about me, not so much as an educator, but about these other areas. And that's what happened because of my dissertation, because of the topic, because of the work I did for the Department of Transportation. Was very unusual that a dissertation got that much, got that much publicity and people were interested. One day I was there in my office and these people knock on the door, and one of them was Jim Rubel, who was an agent in San Antonio. And they walked in and Jim Rubel said, "We've heard about you." I said, "Is that good or bad?" He said, "No, that's good." He said, "We have this idea. And we think that as a university professor that you should help us. That's part of your responsibility to work on these types of things." So their idea was essentially to have an insurance program, an insurance education program that talked about Texas coverages, that was practice oriented, but was taught by practitioners, and that when people left that class, they could go home and use that material the next day. You don't have to wait for months, and everything would be in one place. You take the course, you take the exam, it gets graded, you know where you are, but you take things home that you can use. I said, well, this is an interesting idea, and the nub of it was people in Texas, aides would go to company schools, and the first thing they would ask them, who in this room is from Texas? Raise your hand. They would raise their hand. You don't belong here. You go to another room because we're not going to talk about Texas. So there's no schools for experienced agents in Texas. So that was one of our real innovations, is a course that was very specific to the state and dealt with the technical, information. The other big point they wanted to make was we wanted to be continuing. Just because you got a degree or a designation 15 years ago doesn't mean you're relevant today. So they were very, very high, and we've got to have continuing education. Every year you must do something. So those were the rudiments, the idea. So one of my first questions was, well, how much money do you have to fund this? They said, well, we don't have any money. I said, well, that's okay, no money. Well, I said, then you must have people that we could use to help run this. And no, we don't really have any people. We had this one gentleman, Pinky Brown, his name was Gus T. Brown. He was the head of the association, very small association. No, we don't have any staff either. I said, well, have you ever had any experience doing anything like this? No, we've never run anything like this before. And of course, today the business plan is everything, right? Well, I said, could I see the business plan? They looked at me and they said, you are the plan. So that was it. I mean, there's no money, no people, the idea was more of a thought. I mean, I'm embellishing it to say it was a real idea. But we started. They were really interested, and there's no money involved in it. We put together the curriculum for the 5, just like we have today. This was our advisory committee. A bunch of agents, not academics, not insurance company presidents, but people in the business. And I learned a great lesson there was listen to the people in the business. Don't try to outthink them. You're not in the business. You don't know more than they know. Your job is to find out what they want to know and figure out a way to present it to them that they will, like, and it will be beneficial to them. It just seemed to be a great idea. I just thought the nub of the idea was really good. Practice-oriented myself, and that was it. I mean, there was nothing to lose, right? Everybody had a job. He had a big agency. I wasn't going to lose my plate. Nobody was putting up any money except our time. The association put up a little bit of money. And that was it. So what's the worst could happen? It doesn't work. But we had one great thing going for us. We had no legacy. There was no CICs before, nobody. So we didn't have to worry about what do you do with people in the program and will they like this? There was nobody. Everybody was a person of our future and no one was a person of our past. Everybody we dealt with, we started with a clean slate. And because we didn't borrow money, we could do anything we wanted to. Even if it was a crazy idea, who cares? We're going to do what we think is right and we're going to stick to it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And we tried. So that was sort of the whole methodology behind it and the whole thinking. If we had borrowed $1 million, it's whoa, where we have companies endorsing us and they don't like this, or an association pushing it and you're going to lose this money. We had a lot of pressure on us, but there was none because nobody ever done this before.